Welcome back to the 5th episode of the All Love, All Hate Fantasy Football Podcast. We're happy to have you back, and I'm with my co-host,
Chris Langley.
I'm Payton Hedrick.
And we're going to get straight into weekly words.
All right, so the first topic we'll get into or I guess the first story, I should say, not topic, for weekly words, is the recent news that came out yesterday. The Green Bay Packers will be losing their 2 starting wide receivers for tomorrow's game against Arizona. Davante Adams and Al Lazard were both put on the reserve/COVID list. They will not be playing tomorrow night. As we all know, the Packers receiving corps is kind of thin outside of Adams to begin with. So how do you think they're going to do? Who do you think is going to be the next man up with these two, obviously the top 2 receivers being out?
Yeah, it kind of sucks in general for the game because this is a high NFC matchup. Both, I believe they're the 1 and 2 seeds, and it has a lot of playoff implications. So that sucks just to watch and to have that game go on like that. But I would just look. Tunyon could catch a touchdown just because they should be passing a lot. Hopefully, it's a high-scoring game. And then guys like Equinemius St. Brown and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, if they play.
I believe I was just trying to look that up. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has been on IR for a few weeks.
Yeah.
So I believe he's still inactive. But yeah, so next up is basically going to be, like you said, they got Randall Cobb.
That's another one, yeah.
Amari Rogers. I guess Equinemius St. Brown. So those are probably going to be your starting 3, and then it looks like they got Malik Taylor. After that, I'm not seeing any more active receivers
It's just
on their charts.
So do y'all think maybe they're going to rely more on the run game? Do you think Aaron Jones might have a really big game? Or maybe A.J. Dillon getting in there too?
I think that and Aaron Jones will have a good receiving game too, just because they'll use him out of the backfield more and try to get him in open space.
Okay.
But yeah, it's gonna be a tough matchup. So I don't know if they'll be able to squeak out a win with just running the ball. But I mean, this was a matchup that I was looking at against the 6-1 Green Bay and 7-0 Arizona. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, that's gonna be probably the biggest conference matchup so far this year. So
other than Bills Chiefs.
Well, for NFC, obviously.
Yeah. And then another guy that went down, Miles Sanders, to an injury this one.
Injuries with these running backs just will not stop.
Yeah, it's supposed to be not too serious. He got carted off, but maybe a week or so injury. And he didn't practice today, so it's looking like he probably won't play this weekend. For fantasy's sake and just normal football sake, who do you want to watch? There's 2 guys behind him, and how does the passing game either do better off of this injury?
So we've been seeing throughout the beginning of the season, whenever Miles Sanders takes a break from the sidelines or whatever it might be, it's been pretty much Kenneth Gainwell as the solid number 2. But once we got to Boston Scott after Miles Sanders getting injured, by the end of the game, it kind of looked like Boston Scott may be the better option. I think he's definitely, I wouldn't say more valuable. That's not really the right word, but I think he's
like valuable in fantasy terms, maybe.
We really don't know because we don't know how to gauge him off of just coming in relief. But
yeah,
I think that Boston Scott is worth picking up and maybe flexing this week if you have to. But Kenneth Gainwell, I mean, who we thought was going to be the guy when we saw Miles Sanders go down, I'm just not really sure about it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, everyone was starting to get on Gainwell a couple weeks ago when Sanders was still active because it looked like Gainwell was starting to outscore Sanders. Not really outsnap him. Sanders was still the number 1 back. But, yeah, it's just too early to gauge. I mean, Boston Scott, we've seen flashes of him over the past couple of years. Granted, he was more or less used as kick returner or punt returner. I can't remember which one he was, but he was definitely a return man for a good portion of time.
Yeah, he can catch the football.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's also a good passing back, which is
that's big in fantasy.
Absolutely.
So if they do and can figure out how to get the ball in his hands by throwing him the ball, he's definitely going to be relevant in fantasy. And they have Devonta Smith, but I think with this injury that the only difference we might see is just in Jalen Hurts' performance. like himself. He may run the ball out of the pocket more. They may even have some more QB designed runs for him. It's just it's going to be different, but
I think actually now you mention it, I wonder if Jalen Hurts might be used a lot more in the run game than the other two running backs. I doubt it because they're going to have to obviously protect their quarterback, but it is something to watch for. I mean, we'll be discussing this later in the show, but we just found out Jalen Hurts was the number two quarterback in fantasy.
Yeah.
So the fact he's putting up rushing yards and rushing touchdowns, it is something to watch out for. He's definitely not going to be the main guy rushing, obviously, but it is something to keep out for as they wait for Miles Sanders to return.
Yeah, while we're still on the topic of injuries, guess who was back at practice today?
Who?
Gronk. So Gronk got to practice. We haven't seen him since, I believe, week 3. And, I mean, he was a big surprise those first few weeks in fantasy with a ton of relevance. So he may come back this week. We still don't know for sure. Baker Mayfield and his shoulder. Have you heard anything about that?
Man, I think they're just still trying to play it safe. Although I think did they mention something was torn? I mean, I know the head coach Kevin Stefanski came out today and gave a quote. I don't know if Mayfield's going to start this week. Obviously, he didn't start last week, but I know they're going to want to get him back on the field as soon as possible, as long as he's good to go.
So the reason I bring him up is this is the update we got on Baker today. Is he may play this weekend? He's questionable. Or he may have shoulder surgery.
So either he plays or he's out for the rest of the season.
So the only reason I asked you if you had heard anything is just because we're so in the dark on what's going on with Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
But he says he doesn't know if he's having surgery or not yet. I mean, if he does have this surgery and it has him out, do you think this ruins the Browns' playoffs chance?
Jacob?
Yeah, 100%. You don't have your leader out there, no matter how good your defense is or the skill positions around you, which aren't healthy either. You're not going to be able to win football games.
Right. I mean, in the Browns' defense, I'll say this: they're actually good, all things considered. But the Browns in general, Cleveland Browns are easily the most injured team in the league right now. They're still. I mean, Nick Chubb's supposed to be coming back, so I mean that's good. That's good. But Kareem Hunt's still going to be out for some time. Odell cannot stay healthy, or at least long term. Baker might be out the rest of the year.
Jarvis is having some.
I think he came back last.
He did play last game.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, every few games he misses.
Yeah, it's just that team cannot stay healthy, and
if Baker does have to sit a few weeks, let's say he gets surgery, or even just has to take some time off because of injury, do you think that the Cleveland running backs are more valuable, less valuable, or stay the same?
You go.
I think Nick Chubb is more valuable because they'll run the ball with him more a lot. But Kareem Hunt's mainly getting his stuff on passing downs, and if you don't have your starting quarterback throwing to him, then he's downgraded in my opinion.
I mean, Kareem, he's definitely using the pass game, but don't forget, his rookie year, Kareem Hunt did lead the league in rushing yards. It's not like he's strictly a passing back.
He just doesn't get the same chances that Nick Chubb does.
He doesn't get the rock on the run.
And also, if Kareem Hunt truly doesn't need to come back right this second because they're losing and they're not going to make the playoffs, why rush him back? It's another thing.
Yeah, that's true. Honestly, I feel like right now the Browns they need to figure out what their long-term move is. I mean, obviously they made I want to say they made several key signings on defense over the offseason because I don't think anyone expected them to beat the Steelers in the wild card. But I mean, they really are pushing for that. They're really being a championship contender this year, and with all these injuries, it's just do you try and keep going and try and salvage, or do you just pull the plug on the season and just hope for next year?
Yeah, I really don't know where they're going to go with that, but that's kind of what my thought is. Do you maybe let some of these guys get some rest and get healthy, and you come back next season? But I feel like it's too early in the season to make that decision.
Right.
I mean, we're in week 8. Are you really going to say, all right, we're going to let our quarterback just sit the rest of the season, get healthy, or do you try and see if there's any way that you can, get some guys back and do what you can to win? Anyway, Jay, we got any news on some other guys coming back this week?
Yeah, a couple more good things going on. Jerry Jeudy is supposed to play this week for any managers of Jerry Jeudy. I'm interested in my case to see how Cortland Sutton plays with Jeudy back. I believe he was doing pretty well, but just to see how they spread the ball around, how Teddy Bridgewater decides to do it, it was Cortland Sutton only profiting off of Jerry Jeudy being out, or was mainly it's the same with Cortland Sutton and Fant was just profiting off that? We'll just see how that has to work.
Yeah.
And then also George Kittle should be back this week also. That's just great for anyone who manages George Kittle because
That's
he's
a
probably
key
been
addition.
in the dark in tight end for the past 2 or 3 weeks. So
I
Yeah.
agree.
And to close out this segment, I'd just like to talk about this huge trade that we heard about. Huge trade news with Joe Flacco getting traded.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I know
Flacco back to the Jets.
I know everybody's probably bursting at the seams to go pick him up off the waivers this week, but no, just a joke.
I mean, definitely
he did get traded back to the Jets. He
Yeah.
probably is just there for backup purposes in case anything happens.
Well, I think they only had 2 active QBs when
Yeah.
Zach Wilson was injured. And with Wilson gone, they were down to their last guy. This is
Yeah.
more just insurance. I
So-
don't think he'll start, but Mike White would probably still be the starter, but at least you have now a backup and a guy who's been in the league for forever in case you're a young guy and Mike White goes
yeah,
down.
Mike White was named the starter, and this weekend he will be getting his first start in the NFL against the Cincinnati Bengals.
Oof, that's going to be a tough game. Before we close out, I do want to go back real quick to Baker Mayfield. I'm looking at it right now. ESPN's article was headlined, Cleveland Browns QB Baker Mayfield says it is absolutely possible he could play Sunday. So just keep an eye on that, but we'll have to see. And we'll just head to our next segment, which is actually a news segment we'll do specifically for this episode, and that is Top Talk. All right, guys, welcome to our newest segment, again, just probably for this week, called Top Talk. But before we get into that, some breaking news. We just got this alert a few minutes ago. Actually, during our weekly word segment, we are going to be seeing a familiar face return to the New Orleans Saints as Texans running back Mark Ingram will be traded to New Orleans for, I want to say you told me, compensation that would include future late-round picks.
Yeah.
Now, Mark Ingram, he left the Saints after following the 2018 season. He went to the Ravens, had a couple of good seasons, then went to the Texans, but now he is back on the New Orleans Saints. How do y'all think? Obviously, he's not going to be starting with Kamara in the backfield, but how do y'all think he'll fit into this offense?
I mean, I think he just picks up right where he left off. He's obviously going to be the 2, but we're seeing Kamara rush the ball and catch the ball more than we ever have. He's, I believe, getting literally 100% of the rushing attempts from the Saints. So, I mean, besides, scrambles from QB, but I think he's getting 100% of the attempts, which, I mean, he's obviously can handle the workload, but you need to take some of that load off of him somehow. So I think Mark Ingram is a great addition to the team.
What do you think, JR?
yeah, in my opinion, Mark Ingram's just going to be a change of pace back. Fantasy-wise, there's not really any value to him unless Kamara goes down. If Kamara does go down and Tony Jones isn't back, then I think he has great value. But barring any injury to the starter, Mark Ingram's just going to be a maybe touchdown every 10 or so games.
But if you have one of those real deep leagues and he's on the waivers, maybe just pick him up and stash him, see if anything happens. I mean, I know myself, it's when you know who the number 2 back is, especially on a team where the number 1 back is getting a lot of
100%, like you said.
Yeah, a lot of carries, a lot of the reps and whatnot. I think it's good to maybe get some of those backups in your deeper leagues.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see.
No, I mean, I'm happy to see him back. As a Saints fan, I mean, like I said, he's probably not going to be up to what he's probably not going to be producing what he used to, but, I mean, it's a familiar face, and anything that'll help the offense helps. Again, I think we're ranked dead last right now. But back onto the new segment. So what we decided to do is, for this week, we looked at the fantasy rankings for our league, since we are a half PPR Dynasty League, and we decided to write down list the top 5 players of the season so far in terms of the amount of fantasy points they've scored. And guys, most of the names we see on there aren't too surprising so far, but there are some names we didn't expect to see, and let's talk about that. So, do y'all want to start off with the quarterbacks? Just list them off.
Sounds good. I can list off the top 5 quarterbacks. At number 1, you got Tom Brady. Then Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes.
Payne, what do you think about that of those rankings? Any surprises?
So I see one major surprise here, which is Jalen Hurts. Especially if you've watched Jalen Hurts play. I mean, he really hasn't looked impressive in the slightest, and he, obviously his team really hasn't been getting it done, but we see him at the number 2 spot, and that's mainly because of rushing yards. We know, running quarterbacks are definitely going to be on top of, say, a pocket passer in fantasy value. But it does still really surprise me. And another thing that surprises me, even though this is high, Patrick Mahomes is ranked 5th.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the way we've been seeing Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes play these last few years, all I've been seeing is Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City getting better. And we haven't really seen that season. If you would have asked me who I thought the top 3 quarterbacks this year in fantasy would be, I'd probably say Mahomes at 1, Kyler Murray and Lamar Jackson could either be 2 or 3. So that's what surprises me. What about you guys?
Yeah, going off those two, I think Tom Brady, just because he's had so many touchdowns this season, that's why he's that high up.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. They're still a juggernaut offense. If they can keep those passing touchdowns up, then he'll stay up there in the top 5 too. But other than that, Jalen Hurts has been playing terribly for actual football, but works out for fantasy football. So,
and I mean, keep this in mind. We see Josh Allen down at number 7, and this kind of confused me at first, right? But what I just realized is Josh Allen came off of a bye last week. So these quarterbacks that are in front of him, haven't had their byes yet. So if you look at Josh Allen, who else?
Justin
Herbert.
Dak Prescott.
These are all guys that had byes. It could be a little different where the rankings are since we just had our first bye week, but
yeah,
it is still very much a surprise, this top 5.
I will say the biggest surprise though is just Brady being number 1. I mean, granted, he's still. I knew he would still be playing at a good level. It seems like Brady just will never decline. Which, I mean, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's just surprising because again, I want to say in his mid-40s now, and he's still producing at a top level. But just to see him at number 1, and then you see guys like Jalen Hurts being up there. I mean, Kyler Murray I expected to be in the top 3, especially how amazing of a season he's been playing. Lamar, not too surprised. Yeah, Mahomes. Just the Chiefs have been easily the most suspect team this entire season. And, I mean, it's good putting up good fantasy numbers, but if you're a Chiefs fan or a Mahomes fan, you want to see, actual wins more than just, wins in fantasy. So, I don't know what's going on there. Hopefully they'll fix it. But yeah, I'll say out of that, really the only big surprise is Jalen Hurts. I agree with you guys.
Yeah. Jumping into our next position, which probably has most people the most surprise, is being wide receivers. Starting off the list for wide receivers at 1 is Cooper Kupp. Number 2 is Jamar Chase. Number 3 is Tyreek Hill. 4, Davante Adams. And 5 is Deebo Samuel.
Oof.
So, the thing that surprises everybody is, holy cow, Cooper Kupp is the number 1 fantasy wide receiver.
Yeah.
Not only is he the number 1 fantasy wide receiver, he's up there being 34 points above the second place, who is Jamar Chase, coming off that crazy week this week that he had. What do you guys think about this list?
Yeah, I mean, in my case, I love Deebo Samuel. He's on my team, so he's been great. I wasn't expecting anything like that from him. It's surprising. Adams and Hill are the top 2 dogs. No one would debate that. They're the top 2. Chase, we thought that he was going to be great, but we didn't think he was going to be this great this fast. So that's what I'm surprised there. I'm not surprised that he's in the top 5 just this quickly. I thought maybe even next season or the end of this season it would take to get there. And then Cooper Kupp's just been amazing. I mean, he is having breakfast with Matt Stafford a lot, so that could help out their chemistry. But other than that, Cooper Kupp's surprised not just me or us, but everyone, I think.
I agree. And just slightly off topic, I'll just say Chase surprised everyone. I mean, you should be surprised because of what you're wearing. But we're all fans of him. Let's be real. But, yeah, I mean, seriously, I didn't even think Cooper Kupp was going to be the number 1 receiver on the Rams. I thought it was going to be Robert Woods.
Right.
And just seeing Kupp up there, I mean, at this rate, he's going to be first-team All-Pro for sure. He's going to be a Pro Bowler. Rams are probably going to make a deep run in the playoffs, and Kupp is definitely going to have probably the biggest surprise this season. But honestly, I'm not that shocked because I've always trusted in Matthew Stafford. I get it. He was with the Lions. A lot of those stats he has are in garbage time because the Lions will be down a ton of games. But he's still a good quarterback. And so far, it seems like Cooper Kupp has been the guy to benefit off of that. I mean, we knew Kupp had talent. We've known that for years. But I'm very shocked to see him at number 1. Same with Jamar. I didn't think Jamar Chase would be top 2, like right now. I thought he would have a good season. I mean, granted, he had the preseason drops, but like during right before the regular season started. But I mean, so far he's playing at a spectacular level. He and Joe Burrow have basically gone back to that connection they had in college, especially with the championship winning season a couple years ago. So I mean, those two have surprised me. Hills and Adams, though, I agree. Those 2 names you expect to see there. And Debo, that is a little shocking, but I'm glad to see at least he's staying healthy because that's like the biggest concern. I mean, there are other names, though, at the top, too. I mean, number 6 for the receivers, I want to say, is Marquise Brown. That's another shock as well, especially when you remember the Ravens don't pass the ball that often.
They have been, though.
But they haven't, though. Lamar, I think, had his best passing game just a couple weeks ago.
Right.
So yeah, wide receiver rankings 2 through 10 are pretty close, all within around 10 points or so. So, I mean, Jamar just had that huge game last week, which is what catapulted him up into that top 5 position because – you see some other guys close to it are Mike Evans, DK Metcalf, Mike Williams, D-Hop. These are all great receivers who on any given week could bump up into that next level. So this is what we have right now, and, I mean, Jamar is number 2. So that's going to bring us into our running backs now. Top 5 running backs in half-point PPR right now are Derrick Henry. The number 2 is Jonathan Taylor. 3 is DeAndre Swift. 4 is Austin Eckler, and 5 is Alvin Kamara. Now, this one, I would say most people probably thought this is kind of where things would be with these top 5 guys. Like, Henry, Eckler, a lot of people knew he was going to be up there, and Kamara, everyone knew he would be up there. But the 2 that I see surprising are Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift. I mean, Jacob knows this firsthand. Jonathan Taylor has been having a great season this year. He's really showing that he can, handle the workload.
He's a beast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two names, in my opinion, that is crazy to not have them on here. It's mainly because of injuries. McCaffrey and Cook.
Yeah.
You drafted them high in redraft leagues, and they just haven't cut it mainly because of injury.
Yeah.
And that sucks. That's part of the game. On the other hand, Swift is a little bit surprising just to be in this top 5. Top 10, I wouldn't have been as surprised. But like we said, if McCaffrey and Cook were up here, this jumbles up the top 5 more than you think.
And the shocking thing with Henry's leading, I want to say, by like 50-some points over Taylor. Like, it's a massive jump between the 2.
Yeah, Derrick Henry has scored 177.5 points, and Jonathan Taylor has just scored over 122.
That is
55.
just. I mean, I'm willing to make this this is probably my hottest take so far this year, and it'll probably be a cold take come season's end. But I truly think if he keeps up this performance, Derrick Henry can win MVP. Like, he probably will win Offensive Player of the Year if he cracks 2,000 again, which with the 17-game season is more than likely, barring injury, of course, especially with how often running backs have been getting injured this year. But yeah, I agree with you guys. Henry, Kamara, and I will say this, even like Eckler. Those are 3 names I expect to be top 5. I've said that for the beginning of the season with Joe Lombardi going to San Diego and San Diego getting a new coach. Eckler would have a good year.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Jonathan Taylor I didn't expect to be number 2. I knew he had the talent, just didn't expect him to be top 2. And then DeAndre Swift at 3. Swift is the best player on the Lions offense right now. I'm willing to say that, even though I currently have TJ Hawkinson as my tight end in fantasy. But, I mean, Swift has been playing at an amazing level this year. Granted, some of his points, he does have like 4 touchdowns, or 3 touchdowns over like 50 yards, which does add into fantasy. But it's still fantasy points, and he's still helping the Lions be successful to a point.
Right. To a point to lose.
And just because we brought this up, Dalvin Cook is currently ranked 28th in points among running backs in half-point PPR. And what's funny is right above him at 27 is Jamal Williams, 26 is Tony Pollard. So,
but he's averaging 5 or 6 more points than both those guys. So
he's averaging 15 points when he plays, but he also only has 4 games under his belt this season. Right. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy, but once we see him more healthy, I think
Yeah.
he quickly finds his way up there.
Yeah, and I will mention this. It's not like even with Dalvin Cook gone, the Vikings still are able to make it work. The 2 games Cook was out, Alexander Madison had good games.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Vikings' offense is definitely as good. I mean, Dalvin Cook's obviously the better running back. But, I mean, even when he's gone, the Vikings are making it work. Good receiving tandem. Good quarterback play all around by Kirk Cousins. He's having a pretty underrated season. And even when he's out, like Madison and any of the other backup running backs are coming in to help out.
Yeah. And so our next position we're going to get into is tight ends. The top 5 tight ends right now, currently through week 7, going into week 8. We're right at number 1 we have Travis Kelce. At 2 we have Mark Andrews. At 3 we have Mike Gesicki. 4 we have Dawson Knox, and 5 we have Dalton Schultz.
What a tandem right there. Just the names on that. So, yeah, I can start this one off. Travis Kelce, that shocks
No
absolutely
surprise.
nobody.
Yeah,
Shocks
no
absolutely
surprise.
nobody. We knew he was going to be eating the top 3, potentially top 1 again this year. Mark Andrews had that huge game a couple weeks ago, which really helped. I mean, Andrews had a pretty quiet season, all things considered, but he's starting to come back to form. But then Mike Gesicki, Dawson Knox, and Dalton Schultz. Where did that come from? Especially Mike Gesicki, because he was not playing good for like the first few weeks, and then all of a sudden he's been having like 8 or 9 catches a game. He had that huge game in London. He just had a good game last week. And Dawson Knox, he's out right now, but he's starting to build a rapport with Josh Allen. And then Dalton Schultz, that's probably the biggest shock to me because how loaded that Cowboys receiving core is. I will say, one name I'm surprised not to see in there, although granted he is injured, is Darren Waller. I thought he would be top 5 for sure, but because he missed a game and the Raiders' offense is, it's still good, all things considered, but they're not relying on Waller as much as they normally would. It is a little surprising, but I will say out of the 4 positions we've talked about, this is the most surprising top 5. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I think I could tell you why Dawson Knox and Dalton Schultz are up there. It's because they have great quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So, and great quarterbacks, like, if you watch some of Dawson Knox plays, he's going deep. He's not running, like, little 5-yard routes. He's going deep, and he's getting big yards on big passing plays.
Right.
So when you got, great quarterbacks with great field vision, they're going to find ways to get the ball to everybody. And a lot of the times, it's easier to get it to your tight end. They're usually bigger targets.
Right.
And, if you're going against, like, bigger receivers, like big-name receivers, great receivers, there may be plays that are just, like, the matchup is broken between the tight end and maybe a linebacker that's not quite as quick as a tight end.
Yeah.
So, I think when teams use their tight end effectively, it definitely makes a difference in the offense. And
For sure.
This list definitely surprises me, but 6, 7, and 8 are only out of the top 5 by less than 3 points. So at 6 we got Hawkinson, 7 we got Pitts, and 8 we got Fant.
And 9.
And Waller is 9, only
Right,
out by
right
3
there.
points.
Right.
So any given week, these guys are going to bump up into that top 5.
Yeah.
But I think one to watch for is Kyle Pitts because he didn't start the season too great this year.
Yeah.
He it took some time for them to figure out how to get him worked into the offense, but man, these last couple of weeks having over 100 yards receiving, it's been very interesting to see Kyle Pitts.
Falcons
play.
are definitely getting what they bargained for now with Pitts. Pitts is definitely coming for. I agree with you, Jacob. What do you think?
Yeah, it just shows that tight end isn't as much of a wasteland as we thought it was going to be fantasy wise. But it'll just be interesting to see how this plays out and if the Blue Bloods as Kelce, Andrews, Waller, hopefully Kittle, and Hawkinson just kind of bump up and are more even over the season and more reliable than these guys. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't play kickers or defenses in our league. I'm just throw the top 3 from each. We don't really have to say anything on them. We don't play them. If you guys play them, we'll just throw them in there. Number 1 kicker is Nick Folk. That's kicker for New England. Number 2 is Justin Tucker from Baltimore. And tied, actually, to the point with Justin Tucker is Matt Prater from Arizona. And then going into defenses, number 1 is Arizona Cardinals. Number 2 is Buffalo Bills. And number 3 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
And that wraps up our new segment, Top Talk, and we're going to get straight into our Bourbon Bowl picks of this week. So I'm going to start off our Bourbon Bowl picks. My game, I believe, is the Sunday night game, Cowboys-Vikings. A lot of fantasy implications in this game. Hopefully going to be a lot of passing the ball all over the field. And great rushers, too, with Zeke, some Pollard, and hopefully Cook is great, back and healthy, looking good.
Yeah.
It should be a close game, probably high scoring. I don't have too much faith in either of these defenses. But I'm going to pick the Cowboys to go out and win this one. Going to be close. It's going to be high scoring. Hopefully a fun Sunday night game to watch. What do you guys think? Who's going to win?
I'm going to just go ahead and say Cowboys. I think the Cowboys will win this one. Not really much to elaborate on. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I have to agree with you. I think Cowboys are just a better team overall. Their defenses looked a lot better this year. Honestly, I'm still a little questionable with the offense, especially since Mike McCarthy's the head coach. But I mean, they're making it work, and at this point, a win's a win. And
I think this year, honestly, their offense has kind of been clicking. I mean, they have.
Well, it's the play calling. That's what I mean by offense.
Yeah.
We know the talent's there. It's just the play calling. Although I'm pretty sure Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, might be the play caller, but I'm not. So I just don't know how much McCarthy lies. Every time we hear about the Cowboys, it's like people are always questioning whether Mike McCarthy is the real guy that should be there. But Payton, as you were saying.
That's all I had on that matchup.
Of the offensive talent, yeah. I'll agree with the Cowboys on that. I think their defense will be able to hold the Vikings. I will say one matchup to watch: Justin Jefferson and Trayvon Diggs. That'll be a good one.
All right.
Yeah. So my Bourbon Bowl matchup this week is going to be in the Titans and Colts game, but it's going to be the running backs on each of those two teams. Like we talked about earlier, the top two fantasy football running backs right now are Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor. So, I mean, these are both guys that are getting a ton of workload. And, I mean, both teams are playing pretty well right now for the most part. So, this is my matchup. I think that both these running backs are going to have great games. But I think that Jonathan Taylor maybe plays a little bit better. And I think that the Colts win this game.
Who has the more rushing yards?
More rushing yards between Taylor and Henry.
No. Who do you think is going to have it this week?
Who do I think? I'm going to say that Jonathan Taylor probably has more rushing yards, but I think that Derrick Henry might get more touchdowns. But I think between Jonathan Taylor's more rushing yards, probably a touchdown, and definitely more catching, I think that Jonathan Taylor may end up being the better running back in this matchup. It's going to be definitely interesting to watch for fantasy.
Yeah, I'd love to see Taylor have a better day, obviously, because I have him on my team. But I'm going to say Derrick Henry more rushing yards this week.
Yeah. I'm going to have to agree. I have Derrick Henry in my other league, and he's bailed me out on 2 games in a row just because of he and Josh Allen have been basically bailing me out the last couple of weeks. But, I mean, overall, not even just Henry, Tennessee Titans look like one of the best teams in the league. They beat the Bills a couple weeks ago on that amazing 4th down at the very end of the game. But then they just went in and absolutely crushed the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, that was my Bourbon Bowl pick last week, was the Titans beating the Chiefs. I was fairly confident they were going to go in with that momentum, and boy, they did. So I think, personally, Henry could get more. I think he's going to get more rushing yards just because he's used more in that offense than Taylor would be with the Colts, especially, I think, because with Wentz now back. T.Y. Hilton, I think, is coming back this week. I will say this, though. One way Taylor could get a ton of points or potentially get more yards and touchdowns than Henry if the Colts get enough of a lead where they can rely on the run game. Keep an eye on that because, again, garbage time or just run out the clock, those always do accumulate into fantasy and in real-life stats. But personally, I just think the Titans will win, and I think Henry will win the running back matchup.
All right, and closes out.
Will do. So my Bourbon Bowl pick this week will actually be tomorrow night's game, the Packers versus Cardinals. I will say I'm a little disappointed because there are going to be some stars missing from that game, like we said. We already talked about Davante Adams and Allen Lazard being gone, but J.J. Watt on defense will be out as well. And I want to say DeAndre Hopkins is questionable. I could be wrong, but there was one of their key players that was was questionable heading into tonight's game.
I'm not sure how much of a participant he's been in practice this week.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's a quick turnaround kind of week, and they may just sit him or limit his participation.
Yeah.
But I really don't think that affects the outcome of this game. You're going to be playing against a pretty beaten up Green Bay team with most of their wide receivers being out, that they either are forced to figure out that they somehow have a star wide receiver they didn't know about, or they're forced to rush the ball like 200 yards this game for them to win. I think that Arizona continues their streak and stays undefeated after this game.
All right. And I'll have to agree with you because I was actually getting right there. Cardinals are definitely healthier, and the Cardinals, they're 7-0. I mean, you can make an argument that another team's the best team in the league. They're the only undefeated team, and honestly, I see them still being undefeated going into this game. I just don't think Green Bay's going to be able to hold on to them. Green Bay's still been playing good this year. After the embarrassing loss to the Saints in Week 1, they've been playing lights out, but I think just with missing I want to say Davante Adams is their best player on that offense. You can make an argument Rodgers and Jones are up there, but with him gone, with Allen Lazard, basically their next man up gone, you're relying on wide receiver threes and your tight end and your run game. I just think the Cardinals will be able to hold out and go to 8-0.
Yeah, I'm saying big game from Aaron Jones, and the Packers take down the top team in the league right now.
Yeah.
And as you know, the Mud Dogs won the Bourbon Bowl, and we're going to get straight into our hot takes where we're bringing in our special guest for this week.
That's a spicy meatball.
All right, we're going to get straight into our hot takes. First, we welcome in our guest, Amani, who is a manager in our Dynasty League. I will start off, and I actually got my first win in hot takes last week. I'm looking good, 1-3, tied with Payton. Langley, unfortunately, still 0-4.
Let's not talk about it.
And we're going to see how we fare this week, and Amani. So, my first hot take is that there will be at least 3 or more receiving touchdowns for the Broncos against the Washington football team this week. I love the pass catchers there. It could be a receiver, tight end, running back, or even a quarterback. Just has to be receiving touchdowns. I think there'll be 3 or more. Great for fantasy. We'll have to see how that works.
Yeah.
Peyton, what do you think?
Yeah, so my hot take this week is going to be that the 0-7 Detroit Lions in Detroit go ahead and upset the 2-5 Philadelphia Eagles. The Lions are 0-7. I don't think their record, portrays how they've been playing recently. So I think that this week they actually get it done and get their first win.
Langley, what you got?
All right, I will stay with your game, but I'm going to focus on a player. First off, just small little tidbit. I would have wanted DK Metcalf had not gotten the 84-yard touchdown. Every other receiver barely even cracked over 10 points. But it is what it is. It's symbolic of my fantasy season so far, me still not having a win. But I'm going to stick with Detroit versus Philly. I have Jared Goff, the quarterback of the Lions, scoring 3 touchdowns. He's only done that one time this season. I want to say that was in their opening game of the season. I think, though, against Philadelphia, it's very possible. Philadelphia's defense has looked pretty rough this year. And I think Dan Campbell will be coming out completely aggressive like he did last week against the Rams. I expect him to throw the ball a ton, maybe a lot to Swift, Hockenson, and their receiving core. Basically anybody and everybody. Heck, maybe Goff could catch a pass at some point. But I think he'll at least score 3 touchdowns. Maybe not 3 passing touchdowns, maybe 2 passing and 1 rushing. But I think it's fairly possible, and I'm praying it happens because I do not want to be 0-5.
Yeah. All right, Amani, close us out.
Okay, so I think Trey's going to be Reed because it could really go either way, but I'm really hoping for an underdog situation and Trey comes out on top.
All right.
And quick mention, Trey and Reed are 2 guys in our fantasy league. So that's we're watching that as a matchup of fantasy football this week. Well, that will conclude this episode of the All Love, All Hate Fantasy Football Podcast. First off, Amani, thanks for joining us this week as our guest.
Appreciate you for having me.
As always. We will be uploading our next episode next Thursday, but until then, good luck in fantasy, and I'm Chris Langley.
I'm Jacob Reeder.
And I'm Payton Hedrick.
Thanks for watching.